there's a point in everyone's life where they realize that they should not have done what they just did. And that is the same for chess, because with chess, you regret everything 100% of the time, always. And that is no different for this game that I'm about to show you. Now, this game is not my finest moment. It's not my proudest moment. This game is probably one of the worst that I've ever played. But it was played, and now we will be going over it. So, we start off with d4, e6, bishop f4, d6, c4, h6, and e3 out of the opening. Alright, so now we've got our first couple of moves in. I'll let you know what I was thinking. So, basically, already in this game, I realized that my opponent was trying to be very anti-committal. My opponent, he's pushing all his pawns to the 6th rank. I mean, that's bad. So I thought I was already a little bit annoyed at this, because my opponent has played this in a style of like the hippo, and I hate the hippo. See, I have a video on this channel titled Losing to the Hippo Defense, in which I do, in fact, lose to the hippo defense very unceremoniously, and I thought that this was just going to be a recollection of something like that, and I certainly didn't want that. So I was already a little bit annoyed, but I decided to play normal. I decided to take it seriously, and when my opponent played knight e7, I knew that I was playing someone who didn't actually want to play the game. He just wanted to be annoying. I played knight c3, my opponent plays g6, I go knight f3, and my opponent goes bishop g7, and now we exit sort of hippo area and more into sort of actual opening, because the hippo, you're supposed to play b6, a6, and whenever I push a pawn forward, you're gonna push the pawn like this. That's what a hippo does. And I was completely prepared for that. But when my opponent played bishop g7 and I played rook c1, another normal move, my opponent played knight d7, and in all honesty, it didn't seem like my opponent was going to go for a6, b6. And silly old me, I decided to go a3. And this is a bad move. a3 is a bad move. a3 is not a good move. a3 with the intention of going b4 and opening some stuff up over there. And maybe because he's being so passive, I might get something, but in fact, a3 is just a bad move because I didn't realize what my opponent was planning. My opponent was intrinsically planning for the move e5. He was intrinsically planning for the move e5. And after d, I had to bring my bishop back, and now my opponent just has a slightly better position out of a stupid hippo that just made me like absolutely malfunction. And I'm worse. There's no doubt about that. I'm worse. So my opponent goes knight f5, and he's already going to grab the bishop. I decided to go bishop e2 because I realized there's some downsides to grabbing the bishop. If he grabs the bishop, I'll be able to take back with the h-pawn, and then my rook gets open on this file. I might not be castling. I might not be castling for the rest of the game even, but at least I'll have the open file, and he'll be a little scared. I did notice too that my opponent was much lower rated than me, is 1985, so I wanted to win, of course, and I thought that my opponent would probably shy away from something like that, and he does. He goes c6, a move that I cannot explain. I suppose that the idea is to defend the d5 square, but that is a really, really bad way of doing it. That is a terribly bad way of doing it. And I find a very interesting move. I play b4, which gets an inaccuracy, but it still makes sense. I mean, I'm taking control of the dark squares over on the queen side, and I have a very nice idea. My opponent castles, and my idea is basically that I'm going to eventually put a knight on the d6 square. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play c5, I'm going to go knight e4 and knight d6. That's my whole plan. It's not that much of a plan, but any plan is better than nothing. So that's a very interesting plan for now, right? Knight e4. My opponent goes queen c5, queen c7, and I find the best move, I find c5. This is the only move that gives me any semblance of play. And c5 is just, I'm very proud of c5. c5 completes my idea of knight d6, right? But also what it does, and why some people would shy away from playing it, is because after something like c5, my opponent has this move b6, and he's just going to immediately pressure my pawn. And then after takes, if I put a knight on d6, I have to take back with the pawn, and that structure looks very, very bad for me since his queen is first at the party. So I've played c5. And first of all, my opponent took my bishop, which is an intermezzo move, so I have to recapture. And they play the move that you'd think is good. He played b6. But b6 is a mistake. b6 is a big mistake. And the reason being is because I don't have to acknowledge him. I don't have to acknowledge b6. Because, yes, if I put my knight on d6 and takes, then I'd be worse after queen a5 check, and he's going to pick up one of these pawns. But after takes, knight takes, rook takes, that position is better for me just because of how bad his structure is. So I'm actually the one in the driver's seat there, and he's in the back seat pedaling some type of tricycle thing that he doesn't even know how to ride. Anyway, I go queen c2. Multi-purpose move. The idea is that maybe I'm going to play this at some point and then take on c6. Not at the moment because the a3 pawn will hang, but maybe I'll play something like, I don't know, I'll probably try to defend this one. Maybe I'll play a4, and maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to defend the pawn in some way. I'm going to make it so that works. My opponent takes on c5. I, of course, recapture with the knight because I think that b takes c5 is a ridiculous idea, and the computer likes it for some reason because the computer is a masochist. My opponent goes knight b6, and I am winning the game. I'm not even like better. I'm just winning. I'm just winning like completely, and I play the wrong move. The best move here. I thought that knight a6 was a great idea because it attacks the queen, it attacks the pawn. After bishop takes, my opponent won't be able to defend the pawn because the bishop guards this square, guards the c8 square, and I would just be winning the pawn, and I'd be better. But the best move here is not knight a6. I was also calculating some other things. I was calculating this move knight e4 as well. But I thought that knight e4, while it does threaten this, my opponent can just defend it. My opponent can just go bishop e7. Now, the best move here is kind of wild to find. The best move is knight b3. Knight b3 attacks the pawn, right? So let's see he defends it. Bishop b7. And what I do here is pretty crazy because you think I have all this pressure, right? I'm probably going to do something. I'm probably going to go bishop b5 or something, but no. No. What I'm supposed to do here, I'm not supposed to care. I don't care. This pawn is never moving. He is actually, practically speaking, in Zugzwang right now. And I am pounding him on all sides of the board. I could technically play b5, but actually, let's see, b5. b5 is bad, yeah. The best move is just castles. And I'm fine. I'm just going to win in development, and he has nothing. Now that's crazy. That's a little bit above my pay grade. Hopefully it won't be for long. But if I had found that, the game would have been over. This video would have never happened. And ooh, I wish it did happen. Anyway, that doesn't happen. Knight a6 happens, which is decent. It keeps a +1 advantage, but my opponent doesn't have to take my knight. And my opponent finds just an amazing way to play. My opponent plays queen e7. And this is a great move. And I realize that even if I win the pawn on c6, that's really dangerous. Because let's just show. If I take on c6, my opponent has an incredible amount of development for the pawn. First of all, e4 kicks my knight out to d2. My opponent plays bishop b7. I have to bring my queen back here, which is awkward. And it's just misery. My knight is actually bad on the edge of the board here. And he has this move rook c8 at any time to try and pressure me over there. I'm up a pawn, but at what cost? At what cost, I said. But that's just bad. That's just bad. I can't allow that. So I immediately didn't want to take on c6. And I thought I found a good way to circumvent that. There's actually a really, really good way of circumventing that, is the move knight d2, which is very nice. It blocks the e4 pawn push anytime. I'm always looking out for e4 and some bishop b2 stuff. Right now it doesn't work because after rook b1, I'm saying after my queen move. After rook b1, I have bishop b2, rook b1. My opponent can take on a3, but then the bishop would actually get stuck there. And I calculated that already, so I wasn't scared of that. But this move, like this simple reroute to e4, it also has a very sneaky idea. And the idea is the reason why the move I played didn't work. I played queen e4. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna grab the pawn. If bishop b7 defending, I'm gonna play knight c5. I'm gonna try and grab the bishop. If he goes back with the bishop, the queen actually attacks the pawn now, and then I can take it because there's no more like silly developing moves. Right. But I missed this move. I missed the second purpose of knight d2, which was to stop bishop f5. You see, if I play knight d2, my opponent doesn't have bishop f5, because at the very least I have e4, and I'm going to win this pawn, I'm going to win the game, it's game over, he can resign. He's not going to resign, that'd be ridiculous to resign in a position like that. But after queen e4, bishop f5, it's dire. My queen has one square that's actually open. My queen is almost trapped, which is crazy. Trapped in the center of the board. You think, oh, my queen has so much space. Look at all this. Look at this whole side of the board that my queen can walk onto. All these squares are controlled by the bishop. All these squares are controlled by the bishop. This pawn, this pawn, this pawn here, and everything, all of my queen squares are controlled except for the queen h4, which I played without much fuss, and yeah, my opponent finds a great move. My opponent finds the next great move in a row. My opponent finds g5, which I thought was a mistake because of what I played next. I played queen h5, and the reason being is because I thought that this move I would be able to play queen g4, and then he wouldn't be able to go back to f5. But I realized that after bishop g6, which is what he played, an inaccuracy, I'll give him that, it's an inaccuracy. After bishop g6, what he played, queen g4 would end up in f5, and that is bad news. f5 is bad news. f5, queen h3, he at least has a fork on g4. He at least has a fork on g4, and that just seemed awful. So I had to play the move queen h3 first to circumvent this fork. My opponent plays f5 in 0 time, and I'm actually not doing too badly here anymore. It's crazy. The tables have turned. I'm not actually doing too badly. And the reason being is because this pawn is now actually a massive liability. His bishop has gone from a tremendous asset to being actually a bit misplaced. And I play the second best move. I play g4, which I thought was pretty good. After takes, I'd take back with the queen. He'd have a hole on the f5 square, and I might be better here. The other reason why I'm actually not losing here is because of this battery towards his king. His king is actually very weak, and my opponent plays f4, but this allows me to take on c6, and now I'm simply up a pawn. But it's worse than that. After my opponent goes bishop e8, because of his bishop defending, I'm able to take on h6, sacrificing my rook, which is amazing move. But I realized, of course, he has to take my rook. And I played this move with mostly intuition because I thought that that's just very reasonable. I have to sack my rook here. There's nothing else I can do. Otherwise, I'd just be cramped and dead. So bishop h6. And when he has to take, if he plays anything else, I mate him. I sack on h8 again, and it's over. So bishop takes h6. I take back with the queen. My opponent plays queen g7, the only move, and I miss another reasonable move. I miss so much good stuff. The best move here is actually kind of simple. Best move here is actually the best move here is incredible to find. The second best move, which is a little easier, is this move knight g5, and after takes, I'm arguing that I'm actually up a point of material. His king is very exposed, and after something like fe, my knight can get back into the game like this. I actually have all my pieces staring at his king. My bishop can enter the game too. and he's almost mated here. I'm winning. The best move is very hard to find. It's queen g7. I don't know why I would trade queens like this, but I'm actually doing quite well there. Another move that I consider was knight e5 first, but I didn't think this was much of anything after queen h6, rook h6, and then something like fe. And I mean, okay, my knight has no forward momentum because this bishop blocks all my squares, and I'm not doing too well. The move I played is bad though. I played queen e6 check, and this loses all the advantage, but I'm actually still equal here, even though I'm down in exchange. I'm down in exchange for 2 pawns, which should be equal material, but normally it's a little worse for the side with the 2 pawns. My opponent plays bishop f7, of course, and I take this pawn on e5 because I thought I had to. I really wanted to regain material equality. I know material equality is regained, but I think that a rook is worth more like 3 pawns for a piece in this position than 2 pawns for a piece, because 2 pawns in a piece. Just because it's a middle game. If it was an end game, I would trade a rook for a bishop and 2 pawns, but still, here this makes more sense. Takes. My opponent takes on e3, recaptures, and plays this move, rook e8, and I blunder. I blunder everything, and I cry myself to sleep because instead of playing the very natural knight f7, rook f7, and something like rook h3 defending my pawn, I decide that, you know what, let's not cut it out too much. Let's just play the move knight f3. This seems reasonable, right? This seems like a good move. Yeah, this is a good move. This is a very good move. Because after rook e3, I'm just probably going to take. I'm probably going to take on g5, and I should be better. First, before I took on g5, I decided to play this move king f2. Just kicking out the rook, you know. If he takes on a3, I'm fine. I'll bring my knight back. I mean, this pawn is super weak. He goes from being down a point of material to being up a point of material, but it still should be a draw, all things considered. He doesn't play that. He finds a nice move. He finds rook e2. And you might be saying, but wait. You just said that rook a3 would be good because he's winning a pawn. And rook e2, you're looking at this graph over here. And it says 0, 0, 0. So what should he have played? Rook a3 is actually the best move. And the reason why rook e2 fails, and the idea is this, I mean, you should be able to see that, and taking the knight, the reason why this fails is because of the simple move rook h5, and I have too many pawns. This is a draw. I'm drawing here. I'm going to take on g5, I'm going to probably win the a7 pawn too, and then there's nothing there. There's nothing for my opponent anymore. So my opponent plays rook f4. I decide to not let him have my g4 pawn. I could lose it. I could go rook g5 and then allow takes at some point, but I don't know. I played rook g5 first, and my primary idea was to play like rook a5 here, like rook a5, like rook a5, and try to win this a7 pawn. But I decided, you know what? Let's play king g3 first. Let's defend my pawn. Why not? This does allow rook f6, which I saw. Rook f6, the idea being that after this move, he probably has some knight move. He can defend his bishop like that. My opponent doesn't see it, and I'm going to be able to get on a5. My opponent plays bishop c8, takes, and king g8. And I am back in the game. I'm actually almost winning here. This is a good game, but we have to notice here that it's not all cherries and roses here. Just because I have 4 pawns for a piece doesn't mean that I'm better. My opponent has lots of counterplay, and the most important thing is that my opponent has 2.5 minutes on the clock, and I only have 1. So knight e5 played without much thought. My opponent plays rook e4, and I misclick. You know, there's a time in every man's life where he realizes that sometimes he is sad. And this is one of those cases. I am sad. This misclick cost me the game. And, I mean, it's a free rook. Of course, just knight takes a... Whoa. That's not the right move. Wait. Wait. That's definitely not, that's not the right move at all. And this move is so bad that it allows a draw again, even though I'm down 2 pieces for 4 pawns. Because after rook b8, my opponent goes rook e6. And the main dagger in the heart is that I'm going to be pushing these pawns. This bishop and this knight are glued together. So after a4, my opponent plays rook c6. I simply play a5, right? And then my opponent would have to move his knight. I actually have 2 passed pawns here, and my advantage, I'm actually almost winning. I'm actually almost winning here. If my opponent has some lazy moves here, I'm probably going to win the game. But what my opponent can do, he can actually end up sacking both these pieces for the 2 pawns, and this should be a draw just because these pawns are doubled. My opponent doesn't do that, and I don't do the right move. I play b5 because I thought I was winning. But my opponent has this rook c3 check that I miss, and I'm at 30 seconds. You can't really blame me, but just king h4. My opponent takes on a4. Another blunder, by the way. Another terrible move. He's not even in time pressure. He's at 2 minutes 2 seconds. I play this move g3 in like 1 second because I have no time. The move b6 here holds a draw because after something like rook b3 actually hangs the bishop. Knight b6, of course, I'd take, and then 2 pieces versus rook is just a draw, even if I didn't have the pawns on the board. Best move here, which makes the most sense, is probably something like king g7. But then I have this move b7, and he just has to take. Just has to take. If he doesn't, I have probably this move at the very least. I get a queen, and that should be a draw. But I don't know, probably rook e8, attacking the bishop. That didn't happen because I'm an idiot. I play go g3. My opponent goes rook c4 again, blundering b6. I go king h3 because I'm pre-moving like everything at this point. And I thought that, okay, well, king h3, he can't take with the bishop, and that's with check. So if he takes that, I'd actually be winning the game. And I thought that was very reasonable. He goes this move, and that I just miss. And I go rook a8, targeting the knight. My opponent takes with the bishop. I go king g2 very quickly. I expected knight rook c2. I did not actually order that on the menu. My opponent goes rook b4, targeting my pawn, keeping everything similar. Rook a7 check. I just give a bunch of checks. I'm down to 28 seconds versus a minute and a half. I go rook a5. The idea is to play b6 with check, and then maybe I'm okay. Probably not, but maybe. Knight at b6 is a great move. M has appeared on the evaluation. I go king g1 because I have nothing else I can do. Rook b3 up. My opponent has this nice check, and I blunder away the game with king h3, and I'm losing again to an amazing tactic because I thought, okay, rook b1, right? He's gonna play rook b1. That's what he's gonna play. But then I have the move g4 check. Rook b1, then I have g4 check, and I should be better. I should be winning there. So I wasn't too scared of rook b1. And his next move, rook b2, didn't make any sense to me because what is he even doing with rook b2? That's stupid. Why would he play rook b2? That doesn't even threaten checkmate, right? Yeah, that doesn't even threaten checkmate. So I just go rook a6, and then he has bishop g4 check. He has bishop g4 check, and me with my 19 seconds can't handle it because I know that after king h4, just rook h2, and I am just ready to throw in the towel. I'm ready to say, I played well this game, but, you know, sometimes stuff happens. But then, my opponent takes on b5. And it's a draw. It's a forced draw. It's not even like a theoretical draw. It's just a forced draw. It's a forced draw with rook b6, and I have crazy rook. Crazy rook is when you can just move anywhere you want with your rook, and it's a draw if he takes it. So rook b6. If he takes this, stalemate, draw. I don't do that. I go rook a2 because I realize the threat of rook b2, and I stop it. My opponent goes rook a4, again allowing a draw. Rook b4, again allowing a draw after the move rook a4. and this would be another draw. But I don't see it. I go rook f2 check. My opponent goes king g6, and I have another draw. It's still crazy rook after all this time. The rook f6 is another draw, and he can't escape the checks. If he goes up to g7, then I'll check him on g6. If he goes up to h7, then I'll check him on h6. Actually, if he goes up to g7, I'll check him on g6, and I'm actually winning the bishop here, and that's obviously a draw. I go rook f4, and I blundered away the game again, but I realized and I prayed that he didn't know how to checkmate with bishop and rook. And I have to say, I was right. I was pre-moving the entire time. I prayed and I hoped that he didn't know how to checkmate with bishop and knight. And it seems he didn't. I get a couple blunders here, but there's nothing that important. I mean, blunder, doesn't matter. And luckily, in my 4 seconds, I pre-move everything, and he's the one that loses on time. He's the one that loses on time. It's a draw because of insufficient material versus timeout. Crazy game. That was insane. I played so horribly that game. I got one brilliant move and 70% accuracy. Awful stuff. But this draw at the end here, I mean, that's something to write home about. That's something to write home about right there. And I mean, if I had found the crazy rook, that would have been great. If I had found the right way to proceed after my rook sacrifice, that would have been great. But I'm happy to get a draw. Because this game was just insane. Bonkers game. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this instructive, entertaining, all the little buzzwords. Yeah, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah, good evening and good night.